Okay.
Good. It's good. Cool. Right, let's
Good.
go. We can start. I'm going to
You're
put my
live.
headphones on.
Great. Thank you, Bradley, again. So how are you? Everything's going well over there in the UK?
Yeah, it is. I'm back at work. I've been working obviously every weekday and been well. We've just moved into a house, so this house you can see on the video here. It's all very bright and white, and it's because it's brand new, new for us, and also just built. So it's been a very hectic couple of weeks, moving in, starting back at work, and obviously still under partial lockdown.
Yeah, that's been I'm pretty sure that's been a good entertainment for the lockdown in the last weeks.
It would have been better if it happened at the beginning, so we could have unpacked all the boxes. But I'm glad we're into a new house.
Good, well done. So I've been reading about you in different sources. You started in karting at the age of 10 in 1995. And apologies for this. I'm gonna show just a picture that you are actually sharing in your personal website. That's you can leave the link later. So let me just get that here. There you go. So this is a picture of Bradley Philpot. Let me know if you can see it.
I can see it. I can see it just fine. And you don't have to apologise. I'm quite happy for you to show pictures of me looking young.
We accept any comments from many viewers on on the way Bradley looks like. But you were 10. This is a 1995 picture. You were 10. This is the first time you took part in the Formula TKM. Is that right?
This is actually cadets. So when I was 10, you're kind of halfway into your cadet career. You get a few years. It's basically 8 till 12 is a window. It certainly was when I was young. So that's the ages you can drive these karts. And this was a lovely brand new ARC kart. This is before it was ever raced. I can see how clean and fresh it was there, and how the stickers are all nice. And me and my little brother Paul both had this exact same go-kart, and this came after probably a year and a half or so of racing indoor karts down on the south coast in a place called Fareham, at a track which no longer exists, but there are some nearby. And this photograph, I remember when this was taken. This was taken in a car park near my house, and I drove some go-karts from that car park onto the road when I was a bit older than that, which hopefully I can't get into trouble for talking about that now. But yeah, that was...
It's been more than 20 years, so
yeah, it has.
Don't worry about it. So you moved to Formula TKM when you were 12 then. So you said you used that car between 8 and 12, and then when you turned 12, you moved to Formula TKM.
Kind of. It's not quite as simple as that, because I tested a TKM when I turned 12, but I actually had a crash. It was at Clay Pigeon down on the south coast again. I'd never driven the track before, and as I left the pits, I think it might have been a stuck throttle. It was either a stuck throttle or it was me not braking early enough. But whatever happened, I crashed at the first corner out of the pits, and that was the only time I drove a TKM kart until I was 17, maybe 18 actually. So I had a big break between 12 and 18, where all I did was occasional indoor karting. We basically ran out of money to progress and buy new karts, especially if I was going to just crash at the first corner. I think that was the logic. So.
Okay. Well, so then you joined the TKM when you were 17 or 18, and you raced there for how long did you race doing that?
So, yeah, I think I raced maybe for 2 years with my own TKM. I had a couple of different ones. I bought, basically, I took out a loan because I got a normal job. I was working in an office, so that meant I could then get a loan. It was back before the credit crunch and all that kind of thing, so they were kind of giving out credit cards and loans to people very easily, and I really wanted to go racing again. So I bought this cheap, rubbish go-kart, probably from eBay. I had no idea what I was looking at, really. I got something that was pretty bad. So bad, in fact, that when I took it to a race, it was illegal. They wouldn't let it race. It needed updating quite significantly. And that's aside from the fact it was probably very slow because the engine had probably never been rebuilt. But then I bought another one after that, and we had a rubbish old trailer. And me and my friend, I had a friend called Paul Jordan, and we kind of egged each other on to buy these karts and get back into racing. And I just ran myself from a trailer for probably two and a half years. I actually restarted there was a kart club at a place called Matcham's, which had it kind of gone defunct. It stopped running. And I basically, because I wanted somewhere nearby to race, I organised a championship for people with TKM karts and Rotaxes and that kind of thing. And I ended up racing in that initially. But the track wasn't very good for the karts because it was so bumpy with tree roots. You might have even been to Matcham's yourself for a rental kart session. It no longer exists, but it did.
Okay, so that's interesting. Slightly different version than what I understood from other sources. But in any case, Formula TKM, that became like in one of the most important karting categories in the beginning of the 90s in the UK. So Baton, Hamilton, and I guess other good drivers were racing there. So do you remember any the driver you had the most fights with during that bit of karting?
Probably one, because I was doing TKM quite a lot older than any of the top guys would have been doing it. You know, they would have moved on from that when they were probably 15, whereas I was just getting back into driving my own kart when I was kind of 18. So if I had any money, I would have been in cars at that point. So I didn't race against any of those names that you'd know. But probably the one person I remember would be George Lovell. Because I raced him at Matcham's a lot. And he wasn't normally even in a TKM. We were in a bit of a mixed class where he was in a Rotax, I was in a TKM. They put the classes in together to try and boost the numbers. But yeah, the race I can remember the most, the closest, the best battle, like the most awesome race I had in that TKM was against George. I can't remember who won. One of us won, but I can't remember who won. But yeah, he was probably the best person I raced against.
Well, so it'll be very interesting to see how he progressed in his racing career and how you compare now in which category you are racing at the moment and how much you've progressed over these years after karting.
Yeah, George moved on to Formula Ford, I think, and I think he won the British Formula Ford Winter Championship. And he would probably have been doing that a long time before I then started car racing a couple of years later, but. And now George runs the South Coast karting track down in Bournemouth. So he's not racing anymore, except for fun. Yeah,
of course. So you moved to let's say a real racing car for the first time. According to what I've seen, 2007 with the Toyota MR2 Motor Club Challenge. Is that right?
Yeah. So I went and got a job at Bedford Autodrome. So that happened first. I actually did a couple of these scholarship things before I started racing. So you pay, I think it was something like £500. It might have been less back then, in around 2004, 2005. And I progressed through the different stages. You drove like an old Formula Ford and had to do some interviews and things. And the guy who won was a driver called Jamie Stanley. And he worked at Bedford Autodrome for Jonathan Palmer at the Palmer Sport event. And he basically got me a job there, or he at least told me I should apply for a job. And I did, and then I ended up moving up here to Bedford. I'm in Bedford, just outside of Bedford now, and I've been here since 2005 because of working there. And having worked for maybe a year and a half at Bedford Autodrome as a race instructor with only go-kart experience, so I was teaching people how to drive race cars, but I'd never raced a race car. My only experience was karting and driving the school cars that we were teaching people in. That's when I then managed to scrape together enough money to do the first season in the Toyota MR2s that you mentioned.
But that was an impressive leap to a real racing car, because even if you hadn't raced any real car before, the first year, championship victory with 3 wins, 7 podiums, the first year. How do you do that?
It sounds silly, but it was easier, and it was easier because I'd been instructing in much faster cars. So when your job is to sit in a car which has, say, 300 or 400 horsepower and downforce and big sticky tires, and you're traveling really fast through the corners, when you then race at the weekend a car with only maybe 130 horsepower and road tires and no downforce, it all seems pretty slow. So the most difficult thing about that year in the Toyota MR2s was that we had a very old engine. So the engine in the car had done 140,000 miles. It was the original engine that the car had as a road car. It had never been rebuilt. Wow. And the car was it looks really nice, but it was pretty worn out. So we painted it. My granddad had it painted for me in some beautiful colours. It looked really good, but yeah, it wasn't very fast. So I was struggling to keep up with people who had done the normal things, which most people would do if you were running this kind of car every year, which is get the engine rebuilt and get it tuned within the it's obviously you're not making it more powerful than you're allowed, but you make it as good as new. And we definitely didn't do that. So that was the trickiest thing. Driving the car wasn't so hard, but yeah, straight line speed was hard.
Well, anyway, the numbers look very good, and might be a rationale behind that. But yeah, those numbers for at least for the first year for any rookie in that category are just amazing. But then the next big step in real racing cars, for me, on what I've seen, was in 2013. So that was that.
Sorry, Mario, I've lost your audio. You still there? I'm just going to wait here for a moment. I think Mario might have unplugged something.
Sit in the VLN, which is the
Sorry, Mario, I lost you for about 15 seconds, but you're back now.
So I was saying, 2013 for me was, for what I've seen in your background, the biggest step in your career. That was the year when you had a big leap into the real racing cars, and that's basically boosted the rest of your confidence and racing career. So first in the Volkswagen Fan Cup Great Britain, that earned you a seat in the VLN series, which is the Endurance Racing Championship in Nürburgring, with the Peugeot 208 GTI racing experience. You won in the debut, so do you agree that this was definitely the biggest push in your racing career? How do you feel during this year?
Yeah, so 2013 was a really crazy time because I hadn't raced a car since the first year. So 2007 was the MR2s, like we mentioned, and then I did nothing, like no racing at all, apart from obviously some occasional rental karting, and then instructing every day. I did no competitive racing until 2013, and I wasn't expecting to do any then either. That really came out of the blue. I was at my a house we were renting with my fiancée Becca in a place called Croughton, which is near Brackley. And I was on Facebook, on my phone probably, and I saw a Facebook competition run by Peugeot, and they were looking for people with international racing licenses to enter the first round of this thing called the 208 GTI racing experience, which was essentially a marketing effort to sell the upcoming new Peugeot 208 GTI. So they were doing this as a marketing exercise to boost the sales and the awareness of the 208 GTI. So I clicked on the link and I said, yes, I want to enter. And it said you must have, it gave a load of criteria, but the main one was that you had to be eligible for an International C racing license. And the tricky thing about that is you have to have done a certain number of UK races within the last few years to then qualify you to apply for an International C. So the first hurdle was I didn't really qualify for an international. I certainly never had an international race license, but I spoke to the MSA and I thought they would say no, but they said, yes, you basically have the bare minimum results, which mean you can then pay us and apply for an international C license. So
just one comment, for maybe some viewers don't know, the MSA is the Motorsport organization in the UK. It's like the FIA internationally, but only in the UK.
Yeah, exactly. It's now called Motorsport UK, which is a bit of a less confusing name. But so essentially I got them to email me the proof that I was eligible to enter. I then, but at that point I still thought, well, I'm going to be up against hundreds of other drivers, so this is still a very slim chance. But I entered the first round, which was essentially, you had to do a 1-lap shootout. All the drivers came throughout the day, and it ended up as just over 400 UK race drivers, British touring car drivers, GT drivers, everyone who had an international C license wanted to win this drive with Peugeot because it's a very rare opportunity to just get a factory drive with a manufacturer from nowhere. So you had to do one lap in a Peugeot 208 road car, not a GTI, just a 1.2 litre 208 Allure, I think it's called, which is like a shopping car. And you had one lap, and it was all electronically timed. They had cones that if you touched the cone, your lap was disqualified, and if you cut a corner, it was obvious. And nobody knew what lap time they did. You went out lap, flying lap, back to the pits, and then goodbye. We'll let you know how you did. And then 3 or 4 days later, maybe a week, my friend Pat Buss, who kind of features in my life a bit later on, which I'll talk about later. I think he called me. I think it was a telephone call whilst I was at our house in Crowdon, and he said, "Have you seen the results?" And I hadn't. They'd been posted online somewhere, I think on the Peugeot website. And he said, "You probably want to have a look now." So I looked at the results, and I'd actually come second in this first round. So out of the 400 drivers, I was second, and I was about 0.2 of a second off of the top driver. The top driver was someone called Nigel Moore, who was, I believe, Formula Palmer Audi champion, Ginetta champion. He was a factory Ginetta driver, Le Mans driver. And in third place was David Pittard, who is now a Works BMW driver in the VLN series. And there were a couple of other drivers as well. So the top 5 of us then progressed through to the international final at a place called La Ferté-Gaucher in France, which was a track I'd never been to and never heard of. But the idea was then that you would have to compete against the other 4 drivers from your home country. So there were various other countries involved, and the drivers had to compete against their own compatriots. And so a few weeks later, I was off to La Ferté-Gaucher in France to do this international final. Before that, just because I like to be prepared, my granddad and I took a trip in my Skoda Citigo that I had back then, and we drove over to the track. And there was nothing in the rules that said you couldn't visit the circuit, and I figured it would be a good idea to go and see the track before we turn up on the day. So I went there. There was nothing you could do. You couldn't take your own car on track, but the one thing you could do was pay something like €100 to do 2 laps in a Ferrari around this track. So I paid the money. I went in with an instructor, even though I was an instructor at the time. It was my job too. And I said, "I'm really sorry, man. I don't need to go fast. I just want to drive around the track." And it was probably the easiest drive that guy had all day. I just drove around a couple of laps. And although I wouldn't say I was an expert, I at least knew roughly where things were, ready for the international final about a week later. So then we went to that. We had a series of shootouts, very similar to the first one, where it was all about the fastest lap in each car, different tracks. And throughout the day, every couple of hours, Peugeot got rid of the slowest driver. So you ended up with the final 2 who would get to drive the Peugeot 208 GTI road car, which was really like the only one in the world at that point, or the only one they were letting anyone drive. So we had to be careful with it. And then you had an interview with the team boss and some former Le Mans winners for Peugeot. And so it was me and David Pittard, the final 2, and we went through. We did this lap in the GTI. I thought I'd screwed it up because I missed a gear. It was a left-hand drive car, so I think I went down to first when I didn't mean to. And then we had the interview, and I did a little French speech, which is on YouTube somewhere. And eventually they announced it, and I got the drive. So that's how that all began. So yeah, that's a long story to get to that point. But that really, as you said, is where it suddenly kicked up a gear, and things. I was suddenly doing from nothing, doing no racing since 2007. I was suddenly on this program with Peugeot to prepare for the Nürburgring 24 hours, and to cut that story as short as possible, we did a couple of VLN races in a slower Peugeot to get our license for the 24 hours. You have to have a Nürburgring Nordschleife Gold permit in order to compete in the category we were in 24 hours. And then we got those. I won that first race. We had a couple of other races. I think we came second or third in the class. And then at the 24 hours itself, we came third. The team actually came first, second and third, but I was in the rookie team. I was the 3 or 4 least experienced drivers were all put in together. And so we came third, but the car was in one piece, and I won this trophy that's here on the shelf. This is my favourite trophy, this little glass thing here. So Nürburgring 24-hour trophies are always beautiful blown glass, and that's what that is. So yeah, that was my beginning of my relationship with Peugeot, and that's what then you mentioned about the Fun Cup, the Volkswagen Fun Cup. I did one race in that as like an invitation, and that was again off the back of this Peugeot racing. I was just called someone, a chap called Eugene O'Brien, called me to come and race in that, and that went really well as well.
Wow, That's a very interesting story. I got you were overwhelmed from night to day to become a Peugeot driver, and actually jumping from racing cars for a few years and then performing that well in a real car. That's amazing. And that brought you also to one of your most famous pictures, photos, moments in your racing career. Maybe not the best, or maybe it is, but at least the most prestigious photo, which is this one I'm gonna show just in a second. So in 2015, you had the great opportunity to race against Sebastian Vettel. So let me just take this. You can see it now, I guess.
Yeah, I need to find where the real photo of this is, because it's here somewhere. It's wrapped up probably because we just moved house. So I need to find this.
Okay. So, well, this is in your website anyway, but this is in 2015. Race of Champions. You beat Sebastian Vettel, apart from other drivers, of course. How did it feel to compete against him and other drivers in such a massive event like the Race of Champions?
So yeah, this was another really unexpected event. This was another online competition. So this seems to be where all the cool things I've been able to do over the years have been from just a speculative click on Facebook or another website running a competition. And this was no different. So these guys wanted a wild card driver to come and take one of the spots at the 2015 Race of Champions in London. And basically what you had to do was make a video montage of your best motorsport moments, and then you had to try and get the public to vote on it. And basically the driver with the most votes, or the top two drivers with the most votes, would go through to a shootout, a similar kind of story again, and then the fastest driver would win the place. So it was one of the most stressful weeks or couple of weeks of my life, because it was a constant checking on Facebook and to see if we'd got the most votes, and it got very close at times. A couple of the other drivers were really close to beating me on votes, but I managed to share the hell out of it and get it to basically every forum and website I possibly could and get enough votes. And me and a chap called Des Foley got through to the final. And we did like an aerial atom shootout at the stadium the day before the Race of Champions. And I was lucky enough to win that and then get the place. And it then became even bigger because Jorge Lorenzo, MotoGP rider, had injured himself, I think at a party maybe. I think he'd hurt his ankle dancing or something at a party. And that meant I also, not only did I get to compete in this skills challenge, which was what it was supposed to be originally, but I also got to compete in the main Race of Champions as well, which was really cool. The element that I beat Sebastian at was the skills challenge. That was where we basically, the video again is on my YouTube channel. We basically had to do a lap of a little course, a little auto test course, do donuts and drifting and handbrake turns and all this kind of thing in the centre of the stadium in an aerial atom. And yeah, so that's where that photo is from. And I got to do that a few times because there were a couple of different competitions. There was like a celebrity one, and then there was a pro skills challenge against all the the F1 drivers and the rally drivers and stuff. But yeah, I managed to. I didn't win the pro skills challenge. I think I was second. It was either second or third. I was about 0.5 of a second off of Petter Solberg. But I beat all the Formula One drivers, including Sebastian, and Sebastian was also in the Celebrity Skills Challenge, and that's where that photo's from. And that's where this trophy here is from. That's this one over here.
Oh,
so you've chosen some good photos to use. Yeah, that's probably my next most prized trophy.
Uh-huh. So I've watched that video. It's impressive, and obviously any aerial atom is great to drive, I guess. And I saw the video of you doing the skill challenge. It's amazing. What did Sebastian tell you after jumping off the car?
He didn't say anything to me, to be honest.
He hates you, maybe.
He was, even before that happened, he was one of the slightly less friendly drivers. So there were a lot of guys, we spent a lot of time in the locker room because there wasn't really anywhere else to go as one of the drivers. You basically were in this locker room. Each person had their own locker with their name above it. Mine was Jorge Lorenzo, but with my name stuck over the top of it. And you had people like Daniel Ricciardo and Romain Grosjean and a few different F1 guys and famous GT and rally drivers. And most people were pretty friendly. Sebastian just didn't really want to talk. I did video interviews with people for my Facebook page, and Sebastian was just like, I don't do social media, which is, I guess that's how I didn't realise at the time, but now I know he doesn't ever do any kind of social media. He's quite a private guy, so. But yeah, he never really said anything. I certainly didn't get a well done or anything like that from him.
Maybe he was full with anger for having lost the challenge. In any case, that was a great moment for you. Then after that year, between 2016 and 2018, you drove different cars. So even though you were still with the Peugeot program, you drove BMW 4 Fiesta and the Porsche Cayman GT4 in several 24-hour races in Nürburgring. So you must know the Nürburgring down pat, like the back of the hand.
Like you could say, like my forearm. I have a picture on my arm as well. So yeah. So not just the back of my hand, the front of my arm.
So you can look at your arm whenever you are racing in Nürburgring, just to remember which corner comes next.
Yeah, I've done a lot of laps there now.
Yeah. So among all those cars, I'm pretty interested to see, and before talking about the Peugeot 308 GTI that you drive at the moment, which is the car that you enjoy to drive in the most, and why?
That's a really good question. So out of those three, probably the BMW. Now, it's not a good car. The BMW 330 was thrown together last minute. The drivers were thrown in last minute. The whole project was basically just a road car chucked into the Nürburgring 24 hours. It was probably the slowest car in the race. But that was probably the most fun of those three to drive because somehow we were doing it. Somehow we'd managed to cobble together this program to do the 24 hours with zero budget. I don't know how little money. I spent basically no money. I met some friends in one friend in particular, Phil Ben, who turned into a sponsor and a good friend later on. I met him in the bar at the hotel next to the track whilst I was trying to get some stickers ready to put onto the car and like cut out these stickers because that's how I'd funded it. Basically, I'd just got loads and loads of small stickers and lots of people had spent very small amounts of money and we just plastered the car in stickers. And Phil then came and helped me. He was really excited to be there and he came in the pits and helped me stick stickers all over this car. But anyway, it made it to the finish, and it was called the Underdog. The car was nicknamed the Underdog. And I'm sure loads of stuff was broken on it. I'm sure it hit the wall in the middle of the night with one of my teammates. All sorts of stuff happened. But the car made it to the finish. It came 5th in its class. And I think the other reason it was more fun maybe than the others was because it was such a bad car. And it was so ropey. It didn't matter as much if something happened to it. Whereas the Cayman, for example, I had a £20,000 damage deposit that I would have to find if I damaged it, and I did not have that money. So that was a very stressful time. So although the Cayman GT4 was by far the fastest of those, it was there's a picture of it, so you can see how much faster that is than an old road car BMW. That was scary because I'd had basically no practice, just a couple of laps, maybe 2, maybe 3 laps the day before, and then straight into the race. And you've got a lot of responsibility to not destroy that car financially. And my good friend Luke Jones kind of put his own savings up as a deposit for that, so I had even more pressure not to bin it basically. So yeah, the fastest one was the least enjoyable, but obviously really really fast.
That's quite interesting. I didn't expect the answer, but obviously it makes sense. The BMW was cheapest. You can just throw it and drive it and kind of mistreat it. So it became the most fun. And just the last question in terms of real racing cars. The car that you are driving at the moment, which is a Peugeot 308, you are the champion in 2018 and 2019 of the VLM series. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I remember to have a conversation with you about this car, but tell us how does it feel to drive, and what's the thing you like the most about it? And tell us about your experience in this team that you are you belong to at the moment. Tell us all about your experience right now.
Yeah, so this was another one of those, really coincidental, very fortunate things to happen. I was on my way to the race in the Porsche. I was on my way with Luke, my friend, to the Nürburgring when my road car, which was a Peugeot 208 GTI, broke down at Calais. And so we were towed to a Peugeot dealership, and I got on Facebook to ask for help, see if there's anyone who can help us get to the Nürburgring or help us repair the car. And a guy called Christian Urban, who is one of the managers at Net Auto House, which is a Peugeot dealership near the Nürburgring, he messaged me and said, get it to us and we'll help fix it for you. So we managed to limp the car the 4.5 hours or so to the Nürburgring, and we took it to the workshop of the Net Auto House guys. And I was kind of, mentally focused on racing that Porsche that weekend. And Christian mentioned to me in passing, we've got a project for next year with this new 308 Racing Cup car. Maybe you'd like to drive with us. So we kept in contact, and then I ended up driving for them for 3 years, 2017, 18 and 19. 2017 was kind of obviously a learning year for me. My teammates were extremely experienced, Jürgen and Akim. But for me, it was, first full season racing at the Nürburgring. And we came third that year in the TCR category. And we then switched category to SP2T, which is basically touring cars with under 2-litre engines and a turbo. And that's what we won the last couple of years. And we won every single race in the season last year, which was really cool. I have a lot of trophies in the garage that I need to dust off and get on display at some point once we unbox a few more boxes. But really the coolest thing about those 3 years was being able to race consistently, doing every race there was, which was really a first for me, because up until that point, all the other racing we've mentioned, apart from the MR2s all the way back in 2007, 10 years before, all the other racing was one-offs. We did the Peugeot event in 2013 was the Nürburgring 24 hours. We did 2 or 3 races before that, but we didn't do the whole season. It was always in a slightly different car, and it was for a reason. It was to get the license. You weren't really competing in the championship. Whereas 2017, 18 and 19, we were in the season. We had, the race suits were made properly with all the proper sponsors. The car had all the sponsors on for the whole season. And we got to evolve the setup and make modifications to the car throughout the 3 years and make it faster and faster. And so that's a picture from 2018. And I can tell that because that's got the old front bumper. So the car, even the car itself, evolved to a slightly more modern shape. So yeah, that's a 2018 one when Euro Repar became the main sponsor, and that is me. I can see that's me driving through the window, that's going into a corner called Wipperman on the Noise Cypher. I can see where that is, and you use a lot of curb on that corner, as you can tell. And it also really gave me the opportunity to become a bit more of an expert at the Noise Cypher. I had lots of practice sessions, lots of qualifying sessions, lots and lots of long races in all conditions, everything from snow, fog, sunshine, lots of rain, obviously. In 2018, it rained all year until about the 8th race. So, but just to sum everything up, the nicest thing was the team. The Net Motorsport team was it's a family team, kind of a semi-works Peugeot entry. They had some support from Peugeot and a good amount of support from Michelin as well. But really, it was a family team, run by a core of people who also worked at the car dealership. And they were just the nicest guys. And I still count them as some of my closest friends. So you said that I'm racing that at the moment. I'm actually not racing that this year. Obviously, nobody's raced anything so far this year. Yeah. But I'm also not planning to race that car this year. Jürgen and Akim, my teammates, I believe are competing in the AM category of the TCR class. So I'm not eligible to race in AM because I'm an FIA silver rated driver. So I wouldn't be able to race with them anyway. But this year I'm actually going to be racing in the UK anyway. So I'm going to be racing a Lotus Elise in the Super GT class of an endurance sports car championship in the UK. So I'm just waiting at the moment to hear when the races start and where we're going. But that's it at the moment.
Oh, very good. That's an amazing team or amazing story that you are going through with Peugeot. I've watched some videos, some of your races, and strongly recommend the viewers to go to your channel and have a look at the races because they're very interesting. and many battles on track. So that doesn't come from any magic. You've had a lot of experience in karting. So we were saying before that you started when you were 10, then when you were 12, kind of you changed to a TKM. But then a few years later, you had some other big achievements. So first position in the British 24-hour T-side 3 times in the rental car.
Three times. Yeah, 3 different classes, I think, or maybe 2. It was certainly the standard slow hire karts, and we won in the club hire karts as well. I think we've done that twice. My friend Alex Van Geen's team, we won that as well in the club hire. So yeah, so 2 different classes, 3 24-hour wins, and we came 3rd as well one year in the owner category in the fastest karts. We never quite won the race overall, which was a shame.
Okay, so yeah. But anyway, first in your category, which is what counts. 2013 Red Bull kart fight in the UK. So you were 12th in the 12th position overall in the UK, but you won the let's say the qualifying or the qualifier.
Kind of. So yeah. So in the regional qualifying races, that's where I was 12th. So I finished 12th in like the build up to the main event, and then it was actually back in 2011 the Red Bull kart fight, and then I won the actual event. So when all the top guys, I can't remember how many, maybe 30 drivers made it through to the big grand final in Cardiff. That's the one I won. So I won the important bit. So that was a really, really good weekend as well.
Yeah, and all the Red Bull events are very good in terms of competitiveness. So that's a very, very good position overall. And the most recent achievement in karting was the Race of Champions in Buckmore back in July, I think it was.
Yes.
So I have a photo of this as well. I watched the entire race. That was an amazing dominance. So let me see. Here's the photo.
Yeah, I planned. You over the years you learn that you don't get many opportunities to get the good shot. So I knew there was a photographer there, and I knew they were going to be selling the photos after the race. So I just made sure that I had a few laps at the end where I was pretty comfortable at the front. So I had a bit of time to plan a good photograph over the line, and thankfully the skilled photographers got some great shots. So yeah, that was a good one.
And what a great circuit in Buckmore.
Yeah, it's a great track.
Yeah. And then, apart from that, many people know you in the UK at least, and many across Europe as well, as the BRKC founder, British Rental Car Championship. So yes. Where did you get that entrepreneurial spirit? Where do you have the ambition and motivation to create a championship that was going to success not only in the UK, but also in Europe, and it's now considered the best rental car championship with the media, with all the broadcast coverage and everything? How do you get the idea?
Yeah, so this was definitely not planned. Certainly not. We never planned to have BRKC at the kind of scale it is today. But basically, trying to cut a long story short, my friend James Auld and I were sat around at a table at Bedford Autodrome, and we both wanted to race some rental. We wanted a competitive rental kart championship. We didn't really have enough money or time, or we didn't really have the opportunity to go and do anything bigger at the time. So back in 2010, this is obviously before all the other cool stuff that we've spoken about happened.
Yeah.
Back in 2010, I was happy just to do some karting. And I'd been to the Indoor Kart World Championship, again on James Auld's recommendation. He knew about it. It was a thing that mainly happened in America back then. I'd seen how seriously some people took rental karting, particularly indoor karting. And I kind of thought, well, there isn't anything I can find of similar nature in the UK. So together with my girlfriend at the time, Rebecca, and my grandparents and my mum, and some good friends, we kind of put together this, what was at the time quite a low level touring kart championship that visited lots of different tracks. Nobody knew really what it was, but we managed to attract a few decent named drivers over the first year in 2010. We had Brendan Hartley, who has since raced in Formula One, among other drivers. I mean, it kind of evolved. This monster evolved into something better and better and better each year, eventually ending up at Formula Fast indoor circuit as a permanent home, where hopefully you'll agree it's kind of stepped up a massive level because of the investment those guys are putting in the effort, and the way we now are effectively just an official qualifier to the Indoor Kart World Championship, or KWC. And yeah, everything is just a much, much higher level now. It's now, in my opinion, a very serious sporting event. We've gone from something fun for me to do to something which hopefully a lot of people enjoy and see as something worth winning, something very important. So I'm very proud of it. And just whilst we're talking about this, I hope Formula Fast are surviving through this period, because it's a really difficult time for leisure businesses, and particularly indoor kart tracks at the moment with the virus situation, because they're stuck with very big rent on a big property and obviously no income whatsoever. So I need to speak to the guys there and see what's going to happen for BRKC 2021. So fingers crossed everything still goes ahead, but we don't know at the moment. But up until now, it's been really cool.
Yeah, so some greetings to the Formula Fast guys. They've done such a great job in the last years with the BRKC event, and many people agree that's a great event. So hopefully they can survive, and so all the support for them and see what happens in the future. So BRKC is one of the reasons why I personally met you. And I still remember, and I will always remember some battles we had, and not specifically in the BRKC, but in the BRKC Oblate 2018. And so I'll never forget that race that I was in pole position, actually, surprisingly in pole position, and right ahead of you. And you kind of bombed the kart in one of the corners that I didn't expect you would do.
I'm sorry.
No, it was very clean. It was
okay,
very.
Fine.
That's
okay.
That's why I'll never forget, because it was like a must-have perfect move, and so that's when I realized, oh wow, this guy is not joking.
I'm glad it was clean, because there were some other drivers who I probably wasn't too clean with at that track that day.
I consider that one a clean move, a clean and a very good move. But anyway, good stuff. I'm very curious because of all this experience in karting. And you just said that before, BRKC is not only just another event to have fun, but also an event that many drivers go with all the motivation to win, or not just to win, but to win races or to perform very well. So it could be kind of a good training. So you that are a professional driver, that you are driving real racing cars constantly, how do you think going karting improves your skills? What's the link between karting and real racing car driving?
Yeah, so I think there's two levels to this, and the first one is the most important thing about karting is it's something you can do when you're too young to race cars. So when you're in your formative years and your mind is open and to learning, and you're forming all your new skills at a very young age, karting is the thing you do. So it's very important for that reason, because it forms the basis of your driving skill later in life. And then when you're older, like me now, when you're quite a lot older, I think it's still important to keep you sharp. So I've not done any this year apart from BRKC. Actually, I had one round in Club 73, but I've not done very much this year because of the coronavirus situation. But ordinarily, I'd be karting at least once every couple of weeks, if not once a week, because first of all, I enjoy it, but second, you don't want to get rusty. And if you're out of a race car, then it's just a really, really good way to. It's similar with sim racing, but maybe even more so, because there's a fitness element too. It's good for just keeping your racing brain sharp and keeping your muscles active, and just keeping you in the zone. And although not every single element of driving a kart translates directly to driving a race car. It's pretty close, and it's certainly closer than most other activities you could be doing, to keep fit, like playing in tennis or whatever. So I think it's important for those reasons. So even if you weren't very good at karting, but you were maybe, say a very good car driver, I still think there would be a lot of benefit to going karting recreationally outside of the car racing weekends, again, just to keep you sharp and just to keep you thinking about where to gain time and that keeping that area in your brain active.
Okay, that's quite interesting. That's the answer I was looking forward to hearing. So that's all from me. I think that's been a very great conversation. I don't know if you want to say anything about your next events, goals, achievements in this year or next year, in the future.
Yeah, so really, as we touched upon earlier, this year I'm hoping to be out pretty soon with a team called British Sports Car Services in a Lotus Elise race car. I'm really looking forward to it. First of all, it'd be nice to get back in something rear-wheel drive and something that's pretty fast as well. Still in an endurance series, but this time I'm the only driver, so I'll be doing the whole race. So that'll be something different to the last few years. So it'll be quite nice to be the complete master of your own destiny. And, you don't have anyone to answer to if something goes wrong, but equally, you can take all the glory if it goes well. I'm looking forward to racing at some UK tracks, which I haven't done in years. I've only done the one season back in 2007 of racing on UK tracks. So that'll be quite cool. So I've got my simulator I'm sat in right now, which will help me to learn those tracks again in preparation for the season. And yeah, I've got some really great sponsors who are helping me do that. So companies like NUA Motors, NUA Entertainment, 24 Security, as well as Avon Tyres, who I actually work for, but they're also supplying the tyres for the car for the season, which helps a lot because they do some really, really good race tyres. And that's this year. And aside from that, just some sim racing. Hopefully doing the Le Mans 24-hour official iRacing race in about a month's time, and lots of virtual reality stuff, and hopefully some go-karting as well once things open back up again. So yeah, aim for this year is to win that Super GT category in that Lotus.
All right, so keep us posted in your YouTube channel. We keep following all the races, both in the sim racing and in real life.
Yeah, BTV, which is my YouTube series of blogs. BTV Season 3, which will be this season, will be hopefully a lot better than the previous ones. I've learned a lot about video editing. We've got a nice computer over here to do some editing on, and good cameras and stuff. So yeah, check out my YouTube channel, which for some of you, it's the one you're watching now. If you're watching this a bit later, it's just search my name, Bradley Philpot, and you'll find it. And yeah, once the season starts, we'll have some good video blogs.
Okay. Thanks a lot for that, Bradley.
Thank you for having me.
And enjoy the rest of your night for you in the UK.
Thank you. Thanks, Mario.